How's everyone doing? It's a Sunday night here, it's 8 o'clock in Wellington, New Zealand. Had one of those days. I've been doing this video edit and mixing for the youth, what's it called, Young Jazz Bandit competition here. It's like a youth big band competition, and so I filmed it and we had some people record it, and now I'm putting the video together and doing all of that. Got all the video edits done and I was doing the mix separately in Logic, and then the hard drive decided to die. I was like, it's all on there. I've still got the file, so I still got the working file, so I can go back and re-edit it. But I was like, it's 2 days worth of work gone. So it's been one of those days. But that happened yesterday and I just gave up. I went, no point fighting it. And then today I thought, no, I'm going to jump on, give it another go. And I tried some stuff, and then I started redoing the mix. And all of a sudden the drive worked. So at least I get the video edit, so that saved me a day's work at least. So today I'd kind of talk about this whole blues week thing I've been doing, and just sort of adjust anything that maybe didn't make sense, or the stuff you want to know. Fire me a question, and I'm happy to answer it if I can. But yeah, it's so yeah, Blues Week. We had Blues Week this week, so I thought, well, there's probably some things I know I didn't discuss very well or very thorough, because you can't. It's just the nature of the beast. So I'll start off, I'll play a blues to start. These tracks are all mostly from Jam Tracks channel. So let's start with this one. This is Funk Fusion Blues, Minor Blues, guitar backing track in C minor. All good things I like to hear. So C minor blues will be C minor to F minor, C minor, A flat, G, C minor. We talked about minor blues in one of the episodes. I think it was yesterday actually. So this should be good to go now. So I'll play a minor blues. Yeah, it's a fun track to play over. That's cool. So minor blues, it's definitely a thing. Minor blues is one of those things I've always enjoyed playing over the minor blues. Probably because one of my favourite BB tunes was always Thriller's Gone, right? And for that Thriller's Gone, it's B minor blues, so kind of unusual key. But I always enjoyed that. I'm going to swap over guitars. I've got the Les Paul here, and I was playing it earlier, and I was thinking, man, that guitar just sounds good. You know, it's an interesting thing with Les Pauls. They're funky guitars. Oh, nearly. They're funky guitars. People think of these things as rock machines, and they are. But they can get super funky too. I'll go to a clean tone. I'm going to adjust that camera a little bit. Let's see if we can do that. Is it going to be better? There we go. That's better. I've been trying out a different pick just now too. If you can see that, but it's a Dunlop something. Prime tone. Dunlop prime tone. 0.88. Yeah. Kind of feels a little bit like sandpaper, but it's kind of gripping really nicely. I went and sat in on a friend's gig on Friday night, and it was his 70th birthday, so he put on a bit of a gig at the Blues Club. And I've known this guy since since I was at music school. We actually went to music school at the same time at Fitted Music here in Wellington. He was there as an adult student, and I was there straight after school. But we got on well, and we started doing some gigs after we left, because we're both into the same sort of music, you know, the blues sort of thing and stuff. And his name's Pip, and so he put on a gig, and I got there, and the house amp was a Blues Junior, one of those little Fender Blues Juniors. Man, I've forgotten how much of a pain in the ass it can be to run through an amp. Been running through these modelers all the time, and the thing is, you can just keep turning up. Turn up the volume, you get more volume with the same tone. The thing with that little thing is basically I dimed out the volume in the gain control till it was getting the overdrive I wanted. And then I turned down my guitar to get it cleaner or whatever. But there was a point when there was no more give. Like, that was it. And it's a little wee combo. It's probably pushing it a little too hard. It was kind of hard work, and I was like, man. I would have taken my fractal, actually, to come to think of it, had it been one of those things where that would have been the done thing to do. Anything you want to know, let me know in the comments. So minor blues, right? C minor. I tend to like to, with that, more often than not, I'll go C minor for a whole bar, do the Robin Ford thing of putting that fourth bar and playing it as a dominant 7 sharp 5. Leads really nicely. Now, one comment I got was that I kind of brushed over using the half-whole diminished thing on the 5 chord. The reason I did that was in that video was that the Robin Ford stuff was that I talked about it and using it in C. Then when you go to G, you'd play it in G, but if you think about all the ones that are symmetrical to G, G is the same as E is the same as D flat. So you just think D flat half-whole diminished. Oh, that should have gone to minor. Because we were in minor blues. And the thing is, the reason I didn't do any examples of that is that it's the exact same thing as what I would have done in C, just move up 1 fret. But I probably should have covered that. So I'll show you now. Let's jump in on that minor blues thing again. There we go. Just wait for the ad to get through. So essentially what I do is I'll play C minor, and then F minor, C minor, and on the A flat, G, and then C. And when it gets to the turnaround, the G chord, I'm going to play D flat. I'm going to jump back to my regular pick. Don't want to have to think about the pick at the moment. Sounds bigger and fuller with that pick, actually. Interesting. And here's A flat 7. And here we go, here's the D flat. Same thing, and again. So you see that kind of works quite well. If you have any questions, let me know. Oh. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'm happy to answer them if I can. It's been fun to actually do this focus on the blues, and I quite like this idea of doing a week within these Guitar Daily things. Kind of gives me a focus and go, right, for this week we're just going to pick on one sort of topic. Pick on's an interesting way of putting that. Don't know why I said that. But the same thing with, I did that with the modes, 7 modes, 7 days. That made sense to me, right? So we did the blues this week. Yeah, so if you can think of a really good topic that I should do, let me know. For a week, I'm all ears. Hopefully you can hear everything okay. I assume you can. Interesting pickups. These are the Seymour Duncan Antiquities. I've had these in here for probably 10 years, I reckon. They really do sound, they are nice sounding pickups, but they're not a match set. It's just they make them the same, I think. I don't think there's a hotter pickup for the bridge. They're like the old paths where they were essentially the same pickup that Gibson put in whatever. But they so you really notice it when you go to this. Really does have a sound though, but they're brighter than a lot of people think. People think like humbuckers are warm sounding. They should be pretty bright. Able to push an amp in a certain kind of way. But the big thing with the Les Paul is their sustain. It's kind of crazy, eh? It's still going if I wanted to. But yeah, so these are antiquities. And they're going to stay. I don't think I'll ever bother swapping those over. They're sounding good. I was playing this earlier too. This, the old girl. So, interesting story about how this guitar came to me. I don't know if I've ever told you all this, but I'll tell you in 1 second. I'll just get it in tune. So this guitar here, It's a bit of a story with this guitar, so I'll tell you, it's kind of a fun one. This guy in Christchurch had this, and his father had bought it for him when he was 10 years old, and I guess he was 70 odd, must have been. I never asked him, but he'd had it all that time. And in those days, you couldn't buy the American guitars in New Zealand. You could only get, New Zealand made was all you could get in New Zealand. But his father bought this off an American Air Force pilot that was here based in New Zealand, and that's what the sticker is about. So if you can see that, they were called the Blackjacks, which was their thing. Apparently this means first on fight day, or first come first, I don't know, something like that. But he put the sticker on it because that was their Air Force thing, and they was using it as a guitar. And then the guy that I bought it off, his father bought it, and he took it, put it in the back seat of the car in the case, and he went into the dairy to go and buy a few things. He didn't lock the car because someone pinched it. So he never actually got it. But what he did was he went to the police station and told them, and they said, go around all the pawn shops, the second-hand shops the next day. And that's exactly what he did, and there was someone in there trying to sell this guitar. And of course, because of that sticker, couldn't say it was anyone else's, so he got it back, police got it back for him, and he got the guitar. And the guy had it ever since, and it was kind of sitting in a wardrobe, not being played. So it's not been played much. I mean, most of like you see there's a dent there. I dropped a volume pedal on it the other day, which was a bit dumb. And that chip there, I remember when I did that, I dropped a TV remote. I was watching TV and practicing, and I dropped it and went ping. This guitar is very old and very dry, so if it gets a ding, it just chips out. And it's got a few dings and scrapes in the neck and stuff, which I actually would like to get probably refinished a little bit. You do feel them, but nonetheless, and he decided one day he was sitting at home and he was talking to some friends about that old guitar, and they said, what is it? And he said, it's a Gibson. And they said, really? And he said, yeah, it's an old Gibson. And sort of one of those things that had been sitting there hadn't been played for 20 years apparently, and even then it wasn't barely played before that. And so he decided, well, I'm getting on, it's time to move it on and sell it. So he put it on Trade Me or whatever for more money than anyone in New Zealand was ever going to pay for it. And he kept dropping the price, and I think it got down to about 7,000 or 8,000 New Zealand. Still nobody was going to buy it. So I sent him a message and said, I'm easy to track down, but I'm keen on the guitar. I'd use it on my Pro player. And I got a message from his son saying, Dad wants you to have the guitar. He'll let it go to you for $4,200. And I was like, what? Like, that was way less. Because he apparently had sold a vintage car to someone who it went off overseas, and he was really disappointed. He wanted to see someone actually play it. So that was me. So I got it, and first thing we did was refret, because the frets had it. I got a new bridge put on it, so I still have the original one, but now it's got a proper adjustable bridge instead of the wooden bridge it had. And it had this pickup system done by Simca. Oh, and a new nut, because the nut, you put frets and you got to put a new nut in. But this is a Kent Armstrong, and it's the thinnest pickup you can get. If you have a look there, it's less than 1 centimetre thick, because there's no room under there to put a pickup. Simca actually wanted to put it down here, but I was like, no, it's far that way. So originally it used to be here, and then Simca one day said, I'm going to grind the bottom off that pickup. So ground it down, as you could see, it was like just about touching the wires, like there was a fraction of a millimetre of clearance still left. Got that on, attached it to the pickguard. We moved it up even slightly more, made a new pickguard, put the controls on, wired it through, and just works. I put these little bits of tape on here because because the bridge kit is floating, so it moves around a little bit. It just sounds like an old-timey guitar. I really like it with a microphone on, so we've got the microphone on there. Oh, I've got a question here. Bought an Ibanez at 520. Nice. Love it. Yes, very cool. Heard your input about it. Good suggestion from you always. Oh, cool. Yeah, I really like my 520 too. 520 also. I haven't played it much lately because I played it a lot. And then when I decided it was time to leave Ibanez, I was like, just kind of getting through the other instruments. And actually I've been playing these Porritt Smiths quite a bit, which I quite like, and been playing the Telecaster a lot actually. Just for a change, but I really like the 520. I think those are great guitars. They're really a sleeper guitar. Same with the 420. If you want a Les Paul killer, the AR 420 it's awesome. Great guitar for the money and really works well. I use it quite a bit. I used it on We Will Rock You for all the drop D tunes. Because it's just a powerhouse, big, powerful, grunty sound like a Les Paul, but much more comfortable than a Les Paul. And then the 520 is basically the hollow body version of that, so it's like a more comfortable 335. They are a little prone to neck dive, which is a bummer, but you know, that sort of thing. Like if you see this guitar here, it's just kind of balanced. Right? They will kind of dive a little bit, but it's nothing you can't fix. Just put a guitar strap on and you're ready. But I'd rather that than have a heavy guitar. I don't know, maybe I'm getting old. I'm going to play another blues. Where is the other one I saw here? There we go. Got to wait through the adverts. I just have an iPad here and I just stream these off YouTube, so I have it linked into my mixer. Just a nice easy way to kind of get these tracks coming through. So that's a little bit smooth jazz for what I'd normally do, but nonetheless, still kind of a fun track. So yeah, blues. There's a couple of things I didn't really talk much about with this week was kind of chords. I gave a little bit of chord stuff, but I noticed that whenever I do videos on chords, they don't tend to do as well. I don't know why that is, but it's all good. But I talked about this voicing a bit, this kind of stuff on the blues. But one thing I do like to do a lot with blues, and I haven't talked about this week at all because I kind of thought I'd save it till now, is this kind of Chris Cain thing that he does. If you all don't know Chris Cain, you should go and check him out. He's a bad dude. He's one of my favorite guitar players, period. And great singer and really good songwriter and the whole lot. But he does this thing where he'll go like, if it's an E7 chord, he'll go... and he'll play that kind of fill on these middle two strings, those sort of ideas in between his vocals. So he'll sing a phrase and he'll go, and then he'll sing a little bit more and he'll go, you know, and sing a little bit. And they tend to be those middle two strings. This seems to be the sweet spot. If you play up higher, it's kind of getting in the way. Play down low, could be getting in the way of the bass. So there's just something sweet about those middle two strings. And he comes up with these little melodic ideas. So like that idea there. Interesting, I keep wanting to play this acoustic. It's no amp at all. Just a little bit of amp. So this. It's another kind of Chris Cain sort of thing. So I really like that way of playing, like thinking of chords like as melodies more than just, you know, this thing. Simon. Hi, Nick. Good to be in the live for a while. Oh, nice. Glad you could join it. But we'll be out on the bike soon. Sunday morning club running. Okay. Cheers. Oh, thanks, Simon. Any quick questions while you're here? I know you've kind of been participating in a lot of this week, so I really appreciate that. It's one thing I do a lot too, and I haven't talked about this week. One thing I wasn't really sure about with Blues Week is like how far to kind of take this stuff, right? You don't want to freak people out with kind of crazy stuff, but one thing I do like doing for those that are more advanced with this stuff, you have 4 bars of the 1 chord. If we go to the 4 chord, I quite like playing Lydian dominant on that. So we have a Lydian, mixolydian scale, right? But with a raised 4th. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7. It's called Lydian dominant because you have the Lydian note, the sharp 4, but dominant because you have the flat 7, so Lydian dominant. The shape I use, that sort of tonality, but using that on the 4 chord of a blues. So I'll give you a demonstration. Give you another demonstration. Will, you're here. Early morning in London, yes. Can imagine so. I was in London in 2019. We were in the... we bought a camper van and travelled around Europe for a year and a bit with my family, and we based ourselves in South London, in Surbiton. So I spent a bit of time in Surbiton. We had a family friend there that who we stayed with, and I stayed with another friend, and I did a theatre show in London in Highgate, however you say it. And he lived in East Finchley, so East Finchley was a 20-minute walk to my gig every day. So we did about 30 shows, something like that. So I slept on his floor, on a blow-up bed on his floor while, so it was awesome because he only had a 1-bedroom apartment, but it was awesome. So Sean Spring says, hey Nick, hi, hey man, how's it going? Smells good. Ah, that's what I aim for, funky smelling blues. Any exercises for developing phrasing, scale patterns? Yeah, good question. Oh, you're in Teddington, I know where that is. Oh. So, develop your phrasing. Here's something to do, right? If we're in blues, and I'll just stick with E because I can play the open strings with it. So, if I play a phrase and I go something like... That's my foot tapping on the fractal, by the way, to try and... So what I'm doing when I'm doing that is I'm playing a phrase, and then in my mind I'm imagining someone speaking back. and then they'd play something, and then I'm imagining them playing, and they play. And like conversation, people can overlap, people can interrupt, people can jump in and things, and that's totally fine. But in my mind, I'm kind of picturing someone else playing. It's a really good way to work on your phrasing, because you'll start to shape your ideas. And by trying to imagine playing with someone else, you're imagining what someone might say back to your thing. Like if I said to you, "How are you today?" You don't respond by saying, "How are you today?" Do you? Are you? Do you? That would be weird. You'd say, "How are you today?" And you say, "Good, thanks." Or, "Nah, I've had a crap day, it's been shit." Or, "I'm a bit tired." Whatever, right? However you might respond to "How are you today?" But the response is in relation to the question. So something like this. I imagine the other person playing on, they're not going to play exactly what I'm playing, but I'm picturing what they're playing. Another thing you can do too, so that's a good one. Another good one you can do work on your phrasing is sing what you play. I had a student who used to overplay all the time. He's turned out a fairly decent guitar player now. And one thing I did with him, he had a Paul Reed Smith, and I remember sticking a little sticker right here on his guitar that said "sing." Sellotaped it on, probably wrecked the finish on his guitar, but I stuck it there and it just said "sing." And I kind of made him sing everything he played. So he go da, 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 da. And I need to take a breath, so I'm going to phrase. Now I need another breath. So you see, by those times I need the breath, I'm leaving gaps, I'm thinking about shaping. The other thing too is you're actually hearing what you play instead of just playing. It's very easy on a guitar to go a whole lot of garbage, right? Instead of actually really hearing what you're playing. So that's a good thing. Some scale patterns you can use. So I depends on context. If it's a jazz blues, then I'll kind of get more into it with some deeper scales. If it's a more down home blues, like one of those Chicago type things, shuffly thing, then I stick to pentatonic or blues scale, or sometimes the Robin Ford scale, what I call the Robin Ford scale, the minor pentatonic with the 6 in it. So yeah, hope that helps. So Rui says, I tend to avoid arpeggios when playing blues and use pentatonic scale on the 1 and 4 degrees, minding finishing with chord tones. I hear many teachers talking about arpeggios. What are your thoughts? I use both. Depends on context, right? So if I'm if I'm playing a more down home blues, when we're getting into that kind of territory, that sort of vibe, then I'm going minor pentatonic all the way, blues scale, and just kind of gonna wail, right? But if it's more a jazz thing, so there, that's kind of more of a swing thing, right? And I'm playing a mixture of arpeggios and lines. To me, it doesn't matter whether people play arpeggios or what scale they play. I don't really care about that, to be honest. I don't really care what the tools are. It's what they're going to do with those tools that matters to me. I'd rather hear someone wail on pentatonic and play something that emotionally hits me in the chest than hearing someone play all kinds of clever scales and whatever, and it just sounds and it's an intellectual thing. You know what I mean? You've all probably seen that before with jazz school students or whatever, where they kind of understand a little bit about music and they know these things, but they have no real connection to those things yet. And it comes with time, but they'll play these things and it doesn't mean anything to them, so it kind of leaves me cold. But arpeggios are great. I use arpeggios a lot. I mean, for me, or arpeggios as Americans would say. That's largely an arpeggio. Keep forgetting this guitar. You can't play up too high on this guitar. It was one of the compromises I had to do with this guitar when we got it refretted. With most old Gibsons, there's a little bit of a rise where it joins the body. It's really old. It's made in 1948, so it's a little bit of a rise just there. So it means that there's a little bit of fretting out around a couple of those frets, but I don't use those on an Ash stop, especially anything past kind of there. It's tough to get to. So we made this is the bit. So to use arpeggios, use all the tools. Whatever gets your point across, then go for it. It's all good by me. I see you playing with Joey Defrancesco. Yeah, I did play with Joey. I did play with Joey Defrancesco. Ever meet Danny Gatton? No, I never met Danny Gatton. I'd love to have, but fantastic guitar player. He's definitely one of those people that's highly underrated, and and I love that album that Joey D and Danny Gatton did together. It was incredible, that album. Danny Gatton, wow, what a guitar player. It's a real original voice, and Joey was just a beast, The tour we did was with a big band, but we did do some small group stuff too. So we did, but Mike Stern was on that gig, so it was Mike was doing a set with the big band, and Joey was doing a set with the big band, and then the singer Brenda Boykin, who was from San Francisco, blues singer, was playing. And I actually cut my little finger right through here with a hedge trimmer. I was trimming the hedges around our property, and the ladder I was on started falling backwards, and I grabbed onto something to stop from falling backwards because I didn't break my back. Ended up grabbing onto the hedge trimmer and cut my finger right through there. So I'm on tour with Joey D with just 3 fingers. But at least I could do, I could play kind of chords, and I could take solos and, kind of basic stuff. And then, of course, with Mike Stern's set, it was mostly Mike taking the solos, although I got a couple. As you know, they did Relentlessly. It's a killer album, isn't it? What scales do you use for funky blues? Okay, so funky blues for me, it's like, depends kind of what it is. Are we talking old school funky blues, like, Freddie King or something like that? Albert King, or are we thinking funky blues like a fusiony thing? Then I'll get into all the kind of territories that I do when I normally play jazz tunes. Old school blues, and I'm thinking pentatonics, right? But probably the funky blues, the key thing to it, to me, is to think differently about your approach. I often don't think melody when I'm thinking funky blues. I think rhythm. So for an A, I'll think. So you can see all my ideas there are kind of driven by rhythm rather than melodic ideas. So it feels weird to play that on this sort of guitar. But hey, use whatever you got in your hand. But to me, it's like it's a rhythmic approach more than anything else. Than a melodic approach when I'm thinking funky blues. And as I mentioned before too, I'd rather hear someone kind of just grooving on 1 or 2 notes than hear all kinds of clever stuff that's got no emotion behind it because it doesn't mean anything. It's funny, like I mentioned earlier that I went and sat in on a friend's gig on Friday night at the Blues Club in Wellington. was his 70th birthday, and there was a guy came up to me, and we just finished playing, and he came up and he goes, bro, he goes, you played your butt off, man. He goes, you sounded fantastic. He goes, you're such a soulful player. He goes, you're going to do really well in music. I thought that was kind of funny. I was like, oh, thanks. I think he thought I was just some young guy who was new in town, because he was, you know, he was older than me. But, you know, I've kind of been around a while, so if I'm just beginning, then, which sometimes I feel like I am just a beginner. Okay, so Ryan poses a good question here. Which one you prefer, expensive guitar with cheap amp or cheap guitar with expensive amp? Right, interesting question, isn't it? I've done comparisons of this before, I think on my YouTube channel. If I haven't, maybe I should. I would go for a good amp and a cheap guitar any day over the other way around. The reason is, right? My Squire Strat over there cost me $200. If I play that through my Victoria that's out there, which is a $5,000 amp, maybe more, probably more likely $10,000 amp now in New Zealand. I bought it for $3,000 about 15 years ago, second hand. I think they were $5,000 at the time. But that Strat into that $200 Strat into the $5,000, $10,000 amp will sound killer, right? But you take this old Gibson, which is 1948. This is probably worth about $20,000. You play that into a cheap, nasty, solid state practice amp. That's all you're going to hear, right? But depends on the guitar. A Strat or a Tele that are cheap can sound good. Typically Les Paul, Gibson type guitars that are really cheap don't tend to sound good, although that's changing. Same with 335s. The cheap nasty ones don't tend to sound good. You've got to go for more the mid-tier if you're going to go for the Gibson type guitar. You know, like Ibanez makes some really good mid-range stuff. Epiphone makes some really good mid-range. Sire now apparently are killing it from what I've heard. I haven't actually played a Sire guitar, but you know, you could get a cheap Sire guitar and put it through a really good amp. Like a Sire and a Dumble amp. Imagine that. I played a Dumble, but it was at the NAMM show at that the Vertex booth, Mason's booth, the Rig Doctor he calls himself or whatever, and I played at his booth, and he had a Dumble there, and I played through it, but I couldn't really hear anything, like on headphones, and it's through an aux box. It's not even like pushing a speaker. So while I have played through a real Dumble, I don't know, really couldn't tell you what it sounded like with any kind of legitimacy. But Robin Ford was just on that pedal show apparently. I remember seeing the video, and he let them have the amp for a night, the Dumble, and I know a bunch of people who went and played it. Charlie Allen was one, and Charlie was telling me. I said to Charlie, I said, what was it like? If you don't know, Charlie's a really great UK guitar player with Incognito now, and with Tom Misch, both of whom acts I really like. And yeah, and he played through it, and I said, what was it like? And he said, oh, it was just an amp. And that's sort of how I felt about all amps. They're great, but it's just an amp. But in saying that, if you have the money to buy a good guitar, I'd say it's a really good thing to start with a good guitar. Ryan says, I love your Q&A sessions, man. Thanks, dude. I really appreciate that. It's awesome that you're here, and it's nice to wrap up the blues thing. But like in saying that, one thing I have learned the hard way is that I've bought kind of cheap guitars and then sort of changed some pickups around and try to make it work. And it wasn't going to work, and there was nothing much I could do about it. And then I've just been disappointed. And then I remember this was probably the first guitar that I really spent a lot of money on. Like this was 6,000 New Zealand dollars, which, you know, for someone, a working musician, that's blues rock lawyer money. You know what I mean? These were 10,000 when they first came in New Zealand. By the way, it's still got the serial number written in pen. You know what I mean? That's 1991, so yeah, 91. Yeah, I think Paurie Smith was started in 1985, so they're only 6 years old when this was made. So really early days of Paurie Smith. But these were expensive guitars. But the thing is, I've still got it, and I still use it, and it's something that I'm always going to have, right? I don't see myself ever getting rid of this guitar. In fact, if anything, I'm going to use this more and more. One of the reasons that I'm really enjoying this guitar is I've changed the pickups, and that brought the whole guitar back to life. It just really needed that. The pickups that were in there were too hot for my taste. These really have a nice sparkle about them. They're really good. These are the Blue 90 Mr. Glynn's that have just come out. So yeah, we talked about these already. But it changes guitar. But one thing I like about this guitar is I don't see other people playing 3 pickup P90 Paul Reed Smith. So I'm like, that's what I want to do, right? I don't want to play a Strat like everyone else or whatever. But I do like the DGT as well, and I like all guitars. Sean says, I saw Tommy Emmanuel play here in Toronto on Thursday night. Tommy's the man, isn't he? He's such a great guitar player. I remember watching that VHS videotape of his back in the day. And he played a Telecaster a lot on it, actually, and he's, it was when he was still playing electric, which I think he still does on occasion. He gets out the electric for recording sessions or whatever, but primarily acoustic is his voice. I actually got to hang out with Tommy Emmanuel when he was here in Wellington, and I was mentioned on Facebook or whatever like the day before, I'm going to see Tommy Emmanuel play it tomorrow. And a buddy of mine, Mal McCallum, really great guy, really good songwriter. He's old friends with Tommy Emmanuel. So he said, man, I'll hook you up with Tommy and you guys can go and meet. So I was like, wow, okay, sure. And Mal actually wrote a bunch of songs that Tommy still plays. They wrote them together. But yeah, so we went and hung out, and I got to meet him, and we hung out the back, and he was like, oh, my acoustic guitar's there, play something for me. So I grabbed his guitar, and I was like, whoa, what do I play for Tommy Emmanuel? I think I just played some blues or something. And I think he knew that I could play and that I wasn't just someone wasting his time. We kind of hung. He was really generous with his time. He's such a sweet guy. And then the concert that night was ridiculous. I mean, he really is a great guitar player. Just the thing I get with him is his amazing sense of time. Just has it. Sean says, amazing. Poor guy, though, came running onto stage to open show, fell and hurt himself. Oh, dear. Everyone felt bad. Large, great venue, Massey Hall. Bummer. Yeah. I bet he remembers that, right? You remember the things that go wrong at gigs, don't you? I remember doing a gig one time and I got stung on the head by a bee. I was playing, it was like a 6 or 7 piece band. Might have even been more than that, like 8 or 9 piece band. But there were horn players and rhythm section. We were back in the singer, Ali Harper, really good cabaret singer in New Zealand. And I don't even know what the show was, but there was one song in the middle where she wanted us to play duo, just guitar and voice. So we played that song's Songbird, which Eva Cassidy made famous, and just guitar and voice. And I had this zzz around my head, and I'm like, the hell is it? We're in this big theater, and I'm like playing, and it's just her and I. It's not like I can stop. And then I felt this sting on my head, and I'm like, went like that, and I had to try and keep playing. She didn't even notice. We talked later, and I said, did you know what happened? And she was like, no. And I reminded her of it last time I saw it. I was like, you remember that time I got stung by a bee on your gig? Ellie and I go way back. We did Dancing with the Stars together. She was one of the singers. I actually got her that gig, which was cool. She owes me. Sean says he was freaked out, but what a pro. Yeah, he is a pro, isn't he? He kept referring to it and thought he broke a rib, but finished show. Wow, yeah, that's the thing. I was always taught that when we were growing up, that you don't miss a gig, right? Doesn't matter what happens. I mean, unless you physically can't be there, you have to go and do the gig. Like if you're sick, like really sick, you don't do the gig. Or obviously with COVID stuff now, you got to kind of don't go spreading that stuff if you can help it. But I've only ever pulled out of a couple of gigs like in my whole life. Like I'll do the gig even if I'm like really sick. Like I've always been of that mindset that you just don't let people down, right? One was I woke up one morning, I was meant to play with the Christchurch Symphony, and I had this bruise down my arm. Started from here and went like that, like that whole part of my arm, and on what happened. And I went down to the hospital, and there was no, they said, maybe you got stung or something. There was no sign of a sting, and I was like, gee, and it was like quite achy to play. And so we made the call not to do that gig, to not fly out of town, because I couldn't risk being away and having something, who knows what the hell it was. Sean says, we had a bee problem at an outdoor society gig. Drummer got stung. Oh, bummer. Yeah, it wasn't fun when it happened to me, believe me. One thing I'm really into when it comes to the blues, and this is something that I spend a lot of my time on, it's like having a look at how many different ways you can elegantly navigate chord changes. Like just this, a G7, in this case I'm playing G13, so G, F, B, E to C9, right? Or C7 is the chord, but C9 is the extension I put on it, so C, E, B flat, D. How many ways can I get there? I can go. Sounds like it's bucketing down with rain out there. Oh dear. So I can go G7, A minor. I can go B7. I can go B diminished. Right. Any questions? Anything you want to know related to that? I better just sort that. We have a leak in our house, unfortunately. So I'm just going to let the fam know what to do. Yeah, it's so yeah, how many different ways can I get there? Here's another one. Or all those different things. That's not updating. Come on. All those different things kind of give different possibilities, right? What's another one? So G7, A minor, B minor, D minor to C. And then try and play those chord changes. Not just play them as chords, but go. Right. Was so Rod says, hey Nick, thanks for Blues Week. Oh, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I watched most of the vids. Oh, awesome. I ended up listening to some Robin Ford this week. He has a lot more sophisticated approach than I'm used to, but good to learn from. He does, doesn't he? I remember before I'd even heard Robin Ford, I was kind of into that sort of thing of mixing jazz and blues and finding out like kind of where the line was with it all. I didn't really know who he was. I'd heard him a little bit, but not much. But a friend of mine came to the gig and he said, gave me a very nice compliment. Said, "Man, you sound just like Robin Ford." And I went away. At first I was like, "Oh, thanks," And then I was kind of annoyed because I thought I'm trying to sound like my own thing, I'm not trying to sound like anyone else. And then I thought, well, apparently I sound like Robin Ford. I better go and listen to Robin Ford. And so I did. I went into it and started listening to it, and I realized actually that was a massive compliment from him that O'Hara was, he could see the influence. And not the influence necessarily directly of Robin, but I was listening to like players like Wes Montgomery and George Benson, from the jazz side of things. But then I was listening to blues guys as well and kind of finding a middle ground. And then people like Larry Carlton. I was really into Larry Carlton, Lee Ritenour back in the day. And so it's sort of, they're kind of coming from a similar place. So So Sean says, "Hey Nick, how often do you play out these days? Do you have your own band or are you a sideman session?" Both. I do a lot of session work. I back artists. I do recordings. I'm in my studio right now, and when I'm here, I do recording work for people, albums, theatre show, backing tracks. What else do I do? TV. All kinds of stuff like that. I used to play on a lot of television shows in New Zealand when the studio was here. There's less of that work now, but there's still stuff around. I still get a fair bit of work, and then a lot of stuff backing artists and people. But then I also have my own bands as well. It's a good time to plug this. If you haven't got this album, grab it. I'm very proud of this album. This is my album Reamped that I did in Los Angeles. So that was kind of co-led with those two guys. So it's a trio, and it's also with the engineer who was Gary Novak. If you don't know Gary Novak, you should. Gary Novak was the drummer with Alan Holdsworth and George Benson, and he told me he even come to New Zealand with Alanis Morissette. So there you go. But Novak is a legend. I know his stuff from working with Michael Landau, one of my favorite guitar players. But we did this. So yeah, I've got my own band. So it's Wellington Jazz Festival here next week. So I'm playing a double drummer gig. So I've got 2 drums, keyboard and guitar, like a funk organ thing, but with 2 drums. And we'll be play funky kind of stuff, although a little bit of blues. And then Saturday I'm playing my album Refractions, which is my second to last album that I've done. And we're just going to play that album in full with a jazz quartet. I'm kind of humming and hawing about bringing this old girl down. I might do it. But I also need a tune that's, do a song that's in E flat tuning. So I might have to bring a second guitar. We'll see. And that needs to be a solid body because it's got a bit of distortion and what have you. But yeah, so no, I do a lot of my own gigs. I play, the most I've ever played is about 200 gigs in a year. Generally these days it's anywhere from 100 to 150 gigs a year, so somewhere in that range. I'd say this year's been quiet and that's probably been closer to the 100. But this is all I do, so I have to, if I'm not out playing, I'm not paying bills, you know what I mean? But it's, yeah, so I play a lot. I do a lot of stuff with the orchestras in town here, so the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and then I'm off to a couple of weeks I'm playing with Christchurch Symphony, which is in the South Island of New Zealand, so I'll go down there and do a show. I played with the Auckland Philharmonic as well, which is the big Auckland, for those not from New Zealand, Auckland's the biggest city here, about 2 million people. Wellington, where I live, is about 550,000, the whole Wellington. And then Christchurch is about 350, I think. Yeah. Yeah, so I keep busy. I do a lot of stuff. And a little bit of teaching from time to time. And then I do these daily things on YouTube. Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry. So Rod says, yeah, Larry's BP Blues is such a great slow blues tune. Yeah, it is. Need to study more of Mr. 335. Me too. Every time I think about it, I think I should just go and check out more of Larry. The last album of Larry's I really listened to was Firewire. If you haven't heard that, it's a good album actually. Some of his stuff kind of got a little smooth jazz for me and kind of got turned off by that. But Firewire was quite rocking, you know, some drop D tuning things and kind of riffs. And it's a good album actually. It's a killer band too. I think it's Tos Panos and I think it might be Travis Carlton, his son, playing bass. I've met Trav a couple of times. He's a good dude. Oh, thanks. Cool. Thanks. You're a great player. Thanks, Sean. A very accomplished guy. I'm quite impressed, and we'll be following. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been lucky in this music career thing. I think luck is part of it, but I think it's not really luck. It's hard work, isn't it? When you think about it. Hard luck, but hard luck. Hard work, but you you know, when an opportunity arises, you either make it or you don't. Any questions about the blues? So, dude, Aronymous says, did you set out from a young age to be a professional musician? I did. I started playing when I was 10 years old, playing guitar. Before that, I'd been playing keyboard, piano. I just say piano, but I really didn't play an actual piano. I only played a keyboard for about 5 years before that or so. And I remember my favorite tune to play on keyboard was actually... whatever it is, something like that old Axel Foley thing. Yeah, and all I've ever wanted to do is music. I've been pretty determined, from the beginning, to just make this work. And I've always set goals for myself, and then pretty much all of them have been achieved, right? Yeah, but it's pretty much all I've ever wanted to do. There was a period there where sixth form I kind of got a bit fed up with music. The reason was at school. Bunch of the guys that I had a band with had sort of gone on to other schools or what have you, and I wasn't really, there was no output to play music to other than just playing in my room, which was useful, and there was no music class at school. So music only went to fifth form, and by that time I was sixth form. So I had to go and be in the fifth form class but do sixth form work. And then when I was in seventh form, there was no seventh form too, but I did seventh form music, and I was in the fifth form class doing seventh form work, which was university entrance at the time. So I knew what I wanted to do. But I would have left at school at 15 if I had had my way and gone to music school. And I would have got into music school because I knew the guy, the guitar teacher at the school was, at my school, high school, was also the teacher at the university that I wanted to go to for Te Reo music school. And so I wanted to leave, but my mum was like, no, you should stay and study at your school. So I did. But yeah, it's all I've ever wanted to do. Believe me, I get fed up of being a musician just about every day. Same with everyone, it's usually around, it's not usually the playing, to be honest. It's not the playing that frustrates me. It's the dealing with bullshit, There's a lot of bullshit that musicians put up with, A lot of musicians are not treated very respectfully, which I don't kind of get, considering, if a lawyer worked as hard on their craft as I've worked on mine, then they'd be getting the respect, right? And yet musicians, we don't seem to get that. I don't see why, People treat you like a second-class citizen. I remember we did a gig one time, and it was at a shooting range. And there was two teams, an English team and a South African team. And one of the guys from the South African team came over to the saxophone player and said, give me your chair. And he was like, I'm sitting on it. He goes, well, we're short one chair, give me your chair. And he was like, no. And I was like, nah, dude. He's sitting on it to find another chair. But who would say that kind of crap to someone? And it does happen to musicians a lot, that sort of thing, you know what I mean? You're treated like a second-class citizen, you know what I mean? And yet it takes so long to get good at this, and it takes so much work. I couldn't tell you how many hours I've put into guitars to practice and to be able to do what I do. And I know it seems easy, and there's this idea too with anything that's improvised is, well, you didn't put any work into it because, you just did it then and there. But all that back work goes into it to be able to do it. It's like when I do a session for someone. I generally do it in 1 or 2 takes. I don't like to do a lot of takes, and the reason is that, but 1 or 2 takes is sort of, the best stuff comes out then. I'll keep going if that's what's necessary, but usually the best stuff's in the first couple of takes on a thing and then move on. But yeah, the reason I can do that is because I practice so much. That's really it. Being in the Southern Hemisphere, when alternate picking, do you have a strong beat with an upstroke? Bad joke. Yeah, right. Because we're upside down over here, right? There is a thing with the toilet where the water goes the opposite way, right? The way it goes in the States. I didn't even realize that was a thing, but people had said that was a thing. And then I remember getting to the US one time in California, and then I was like, oh, it does. All right, Sean says, I tell people, always hug a musician, they never get to dance. Yeah, that's the thing. And actually one of the most frustrating things about music is actually getting paid, believe it or not. It's like you agree to something and then you're like waiting for ages for someone to kind of get around to actually doing it. You know, I've had some gigs where it's taken like 6 months to get paid, and at that point you're just like, it wasn't even worth doing the gig. You know what I mean? Maybe that happens in other fields, I don't know, but so as I was saying with that thing of looking at how do I get between chords, so yeah, there's so many possibilities, right? And then I look at like how can I play between those. So something like, and I'm getting to there, I might go, you know, how many different ways can I kind of make those movements work? And I really spend a lot of time studying that stuff so that when you're in the heat of battle, it's sort of all going to present itself. And even if other people aren't playing it, you can, right? You can suggest some harmony, because really I'd say more than anything, I'm a student of harmony. That's kind of how I see it about what I do. And on the blues, interesting, this guitar, definitely not as bright as the last. So the thing with humbuckers, right? Like a good set of humbuckers are actually quite bright. People think, you know, humbuckers are this big, fat, warm, round thing, and they can be. But also, you know, like they should have like quite a bit of brightness, especially if they're vintage PAF style pickups like that. Yeah. Oh, let's tune that. It's the problem when you just stack all your guitars on top of each other. I need to get some more stands handy here. Oh, it's really gone out of tune. Too much funk. So I've got the treble bleed in here now. I kind of I messed around with it. I got some alligator clips from JK and I clipped them onto the pot, and then that meant I could kind of experiment with a few different caps and resistors and how to use them in. Interesting thing about treble bleeds is people think, you know, a treble bleed is actually like going to change the volume, but it doesn't really. If you think about it, what a treble bleed does is it lets the treble through. So what are you turning down if the treble's going through? You're turning down mids and bass. So really I see it as more an EQ than anything else. Now there's a perception of quieter because, you know, mid-range is where guitar lives. Whole tone scale. It's kind of a fun one. That's one I didn't talk about on the blues, right? Whole tone scale. Take something like that, an augmented triad, move it up in whole tones. One thing that the bummer of treble bleeds is that with this, really the one thing that isn't great about it is that as you turn your volume down, the taper changes, right? Because it's not, you don't have the same. See how it's kind of still letting not all the treble through, but a lot of it. So as you turn down, you're making it thinner and brighter, but it's not like a regular volume control where it's turning all frequencies down, treble more than anything else, which is why, you know, normally I don't particularly like it on this sort of guitar. But it means if you want to do volume swells, see if I don't really work very well. One thing I do like about this guitar is the way it makes me play. I was going to say the way you make me feel. That Michael Jackson song. But it's just, yeah, unfinished neck, right? It's been sanded back by whoever had it before me. It feels really nice to play. And it makes me play a certain way. I tend to find when I play this guitar, I don't tend to pick too hard. I tend to want to pick lighter. I might play one more tune because I'm going to have to split in a minute, people. I have to get back to some more video editing. So this is from Jam Track Channel again. This is John Scofield Funky Blues Guitar Backing Track in B flat. That sounds like me. Let's do it. Let's go neck pickup. So this is interesting. This amp is I've been experimenting around with different presets. Excuse me. In the Fractal. This is the Texas. I think it's called Texas Special. Which a Texas Star, sorry, which is basically the Lone Star model and the in Real World, the Mesa Boogie one. I really like it. I kind of always use the vibrato lux in there. I thought that was a really good representation of a Fender amp. But I'm liking this Texas Star too, and I've kind of been getting more and more into that. So I've been developing this new preset. It's a nice compression. And it's big, but it's not. I mean, basically those Texas Lone Stars, Mesa Boogie Lone Stars were basically Fenders when they were going for the Fender amp kind of vibe. Alright, let's play this track. Here's another track. Hopefully no ads. There's always going to be ads. I was hoping I'd go straight into another track in another key, but we were getting hit with ads. So this is A minor Soulful Blues groove. Let's go to a different sound. Tap the tempo in for the delay. Okay, so that had some interesting changes. B minor, and then D minor 7, back to A minor, and then it was all its minor chords, right? And then there was one chorus there where it was, and then a minor 2-5-1. I was like, I heard that. I was like, whoa, there you go. Took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go. People, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone being here, and I really have enjoyed doing the blues week on Guitar Daily this week. So have a think about some stuff. If you think there's a topic I could kind of spend a week on, I was thinking actually a week on jazz standards could be something, a different standard every day for 7 days could be fun, or something like that. I kind of like to go more in depth with that Robin Ford thing. I sort of felt like I only skimmed the surface because I kind of focused on soloing and only on one song. But it would be really good to kind of go more in depth with Robin's playing because, he's been a big influence on me. So Robin's probably one of my biggest influences. George Benson's one of my biggest. Wes Montgomery's one of my biggest influences. Pat Metheny, John Schofield, no question. Mike Stern, no question. Lots of people, Larry Carlton. So it'd be good to kind of delve into that Robin Ford thing more. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are. All the best with your music. Cheers. See you soon.